everybody. This is Jason Augustus Newcomb, and we are inside the Magic Circle. Today I am talking to a very fascinating occultist. He runs a popular blog called Head for the Red. He's also written the book Seven Spheres, and he's got a new book coming out, I think, pretty soon called Modern Goetic Grimoire. This is a gentleman who's most commonly known as Rufus Opus, but most often at this point I see Rufus Opus parentheses Joshua Gadbois. So apparently he's going through a sort of John Cougar Mellencamp kind of phase. He'll eventually be Joshua Gadbois, I have the feeling. I'm pronouncing that correctly, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm on? Okay.
Yeah, you're on.
It's just the Goetic Grimoire, and it was published. Frank from Nephilim is on top of that now. It seems like he's up to speed on orders. So if you go to nephilimpress.com, you'll be able to place an order for my Goetic Grimoire. And then
you are right on top of the promotional stuff.
Hey,
you got to get to it. So no, it's okay. Plenty of time. We'll mention that website many times and your website many times throughout this. But No, don't worry about it. There's no need for apologies. There's no rules here. You can do whatever you want. If you just want to hold up products to the camera for the next 2 hours, that's
basically
fine.
all I had planned, And did I mention I'm a gigolo now? I'll just
well, okay. So I mean,
I'm just kidding.
Affordable rates or
for you, yeah. I mean,
oh wow, that's interesting. I wasn't asking personally, but I know a lot of ladies who might be interested in signing up for that. No, I don't. But if I did, I would send them right your way.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
So you started off your sort of writing career as Rufus Opus. What inspired that name, and what is the red work to you? I was going to ask that as well.
Oh, well, in the alchemical system that I was studying at the time that I picked my pen name, there were the 4 phases of the great work: the black work, the white work, the green work, and the red work. And you take the primum materia and you put it through its paces in the black work, and it turns black, and then you heat it up more and it turns white, and it's the white phase. And the red phase was the last phase where you create the philosopher's stone out of all the purified ingredients that you've made. And I was heading for the red phase, and I was aiming for that. So that was why my blog was Head for the Red. And I picked Rufus Opus for the red work because I thought that's what it meant. But
is it a known system of alchemy? Like, is there a school that you were attending, or something that you sort of pieced together?
It was based on the esoteric alchemy pieces website.
You're breaking up a little bit. We might need to.
I'm sorry.
You're freezing up. So.
I'm plugged directly into the internet, so.
Well, listen. Go ahead and re-answer that question because I can edit it.
Okay, what was the question again?
Okay, I'll just ask the question again. So this is the point, Jason, where you need to edit this thing or not, and just have completely chaotic, non-professional stuff going on in it. Okay, so the question is the 4-phase alchemy system that you were studying based on what?
Clean has a website called the Alchemy Lab. Mm-hmm. I have to Google it every time because it's not actually called alchemylab.com or anything. That would be
levity and something are in there, I think.
Yeah, the phases of the work are black, white, and green, or for almost between the approach, because it makes room for everything that I have going on in my practices. It makes room for the transformative step in the process. Like after you've got your material world sort of set up and you're starting to work on your spiritual purification, and you've got yourself, or how, like, let's take the Albermelon as a model here. You know how you go off in the woods and hide, and somebody brings you food every once in a while, but mostly you sit there and you pray at certain times, and then you think about your life and what you did. You just think about what you've done to get here.
Okay.
Right. I mean,
are you trying to make Aaron Leach mad? He's very protective over that Abramelin, right?
Well, it's his. He can own it forever. He actually wrote it.
He's Abraham the Jew. Yes. Yeah.
That's right, and that's why those squares are all kind of confusing in all the manuscripts, because Aaron Leach.
Oh man, we'll get to your Aaron Leach thing in a minute, but I've got a quick question for you. As a professional gigolo, is there a connection between the peacock phase in the alchemy and the peacocking that you do in order to impress the ladies?
Quite a bit, actually. And when you get to the green phase, the heat gets to just the right temperature and the heat is expressed. I don't know. Yeah, sure.
Little
We'll go with
improv there.
that.
Okay, so I want to take a step back. When kind of emerged into people's awareness as a blogger a number of years ago, but you obviously were studying this stuff before that. Like, what was your journey to get into being who you are now?
I started out with Donald Michael Craig's 11 Lessons in High Magic. I think that's where my actual ceremonial magic or Western magic approach started. I had a couple of Cunningham's Wicca books and some elemental initiation things here and there that I picked up at Walden Books at the mall when I was like 16.
Amazing that they had those, but they did.
It was Denver, so they had to compete with the tattered cover back then.
Well, I had a Walden Books in my town, and that was one of my first esoteric stores too. Although we did have an esoteric shop too.
Yeah, they had a New Age section, right? That was like one shelf.
Yeah, one shelf. A lot of different topics. One book on every topic.
That was our shelf, and there was no coffee. If you bring coffee in, they looked at you funny.
So what were some of the first things you read besides the 11 Lessons in Magic or Modern Magic by Craig, and what else was an influence on you? Did you meet people that were doing that?
I wish it was that. I wish it was like that. I didn't meet him for years and years, but I was fortunate enough to get into Robert Anton Wilson and the Illuminatus trilogy.
Yes.
And basically, I read that when I was 17, and I started reading Ken Kesey's like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and all of his LSD experimentation stuff, the Tom Wolfe book about the electric Kool-Aid acid test, Jack Kerouac and On the Road, and all that stuff sort of all hit me at once, and my first LSD experience.
I was going to say, how much did drugs play in the part of your early magical growth?
About that much, honestly. It doesn't take much.
No. One time can be it, right?
I'm good, but yeah, no, so Robert Anton Wilson wrote the Illuminatus trilogy, which contains every occult mystery, secret, hidden tradition on the planet in it,
in one way or another.
Yeah, exactly. And all the mysteries of the OTR are revealed there. And it took me years to find out that that's because Lon Milo Duquette and Robert Anton Wilson used to get high on the same couch together and talk about all the mysteries of the OTO.
I just talked to Lon and he did not bring that topic up.
You should bring that up with him sometime. He is, so yeah, I joined the OTO like 100 years later, and Lon is still like creaking around and he's like, I remember Bob. I'm like, oh my God, you were like in the room with one of my saints.
What's crazy is that Lon is not creaking around. Like you should. I knew him back in the 1990s, and he was a totally different. He looked like he was on death's door in a lot of ways, and now he's this vibrant, musician. Much more sort of, just awake and there than he was when I first met him.
I credit the supplements.
He's definitely a testament to the fact that magic can be transformative and healing. So so you were reading Robert Anton Wilson. You and I have, that's something we definitely have in common, was that sort of like fun, sexy, druggy, magical fantasy land. How did it transform into reality for you?
It took a while, but I'm pretty much living the life now. So I don't know how did it transform. Well, I guess I spent a long time hopping in and out of the occult and Christianity and other belief systems here and there. I was a druid for a while, and eventually, like in 2006, I got serious, and I had just come out of basically a 3 or 4 month long retreat from a very Christian paradigm where everything that I believed as a Christian was proven to be less than meaningful than I'd like to pretend. And then I got my hands on Libra again.
Was that a formal retreat, or just you sort of retreated from the world and had those experiences?
I was unemployed, and I was spending 4 to 6 hours a day in prayer in various forms, and meditation and reading the Bible and begging God for a frickin' job. Anyway, it didn't work, and I got mad. So I went back to the occult, and I started reading Samek. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this makes sense, And so I started doing the ritual in the astral, because I finally saw that little bit there that said it was done in the body of light. Yeah. I was like, you mean I don't have to do this? I can just think about it? This is perfect. this is like the best magic ever. So every night for like 2 weeks, I would sit on my couch and I would do Libra Somic, you know, and at first it took like forever. You know, I was flipping through the thing and reading it with my eyes half opened. but after a while, I started, it became part of my subconscious. And after a couple of weeks, it just, I was doing it mostly from memory. I had the cue cards next to me in case of emergency. And the smell came into the room. And I had a very mystical personal experience with what I consider my holy guardian angel.
Mm-hmm.
I received a name at that point, and basically I thought that I had just like hit the jackpot, you know, super. I found this passage in the Abramelin that mentions this smell that fills the room that makes you say, blessed is the day of the Lord, you know, because it's just this intense, and this smell is it was like back of the throat kind of smell, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of makes your mouth water, and it's like a hormone smell, like on the breath of a pregnant woman who's like healthy and been taking her vitamins, right? You know what I mean?
That last part you lost me a little bit, but okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Have you been sniffing?
Not know
women
exactly
recently?
What that smell is. Yes,
What?
I'm dealing in black market pregnancy woman hormones.
That's available at www.joshuagadbois.com.
No. That would be Jason Augustus Newcomb honest.com.
Okay, so you had this Abramelin ish experience that, you know,
ish. Yeah. I felt like I had KNCHGA, and I went off into the internet and started talking to people and hooked up with Logan Hillier. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's one of those brilliant people who are also basically an actor. So you know how actors are.
Dramatic.
They would rather direct.
Oh, okay.
But they don't. But he ended up living in John Dee's old place in Prague.
Cool.
Like, no, not John Dee, the other one, Edward Kelly's.
Kelly?
Yeah, the tower that Edward Kelly fell out of. He had a flat
allegedly,
in that tower.
Yeah.
He had a flat. He had like a whole fucking apartment where Kelly is like, anyway, I'm not jealous. I'm bitter.
So your Dee and Kelly are also, you know, big influences on you?
Oh, not so much, because it was way too complicated. So after at KNCHGA, I started studying the angels, and I picked a system that had the fewest number of angels.
Hold on a second. You're saying that alchemy is uncomplicated, but John Dee's system is complicated? Is it?
Okay, so the key word to understanding my understanding of alchemy is esoteric. Right. So I go through and I read all this stuff, and I recognize about half the words. I can put together the context from context clues of what they're trying to talk about. Mm-hmm. And then I take it and I apply it to my spiritual understanding and reinterpret it as if what they really meant was what I already believe.
What you think is true.
Right, exactly.
One of the things I really like about you is that you're very honest about your BS sometimes, you know, like.
Well, I mean, I don't do it on purpose. I recognize
alchemy, and they all say different things. Obviously they're doing exactly the same thing, right?
If I'm proficient at any part of alchemy, it would be the dry work, and it would be moving copper from an impure form to a slightly more pure form, and watching the pretty colors it turns as it cools off as you take it through the phases.
So you're talking about sort of chemical alchemy.
Yeah, and it's contemplative alchemy too. Like all of the processes in the wet work where they would watch the frogs decompose and mold grow on them and all that stuff. The observer was being transformed by the rite. It was like, are you familiar with what's his name, the Portaluce rite from the French guy that?
What is it? I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. You make like 3
philosophers
talismans.
Of nature. Is that the?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah, and you just take baths on when the stars are right in the starlight, you know. And I'm like, okay, but that approach, that contemplative approach of just sitting there and letting the energies make the change on you is sort of what was going on with the alchemists for the spiritual great work that they were working on. It was all done by watching frogs decay, and you think that's ridiculous until you watch a time stop of a frog decaying.
Sure,
And
it's an amazing thing to watch.
Yeah, and if you combine it with something like Libra HHH from Crowley, where he takes you through the death and the opening of the mouth ritual from the mummy's perspective, and where you're raised up and into the heavens and empowered. If you look at,
I have a meditation on that in my new Hermetics system. You can listen to a recording of something very similar to that.
Oh, are you selling that right now? Is that available?
Oh yeah,
online?
no, I have a whole
Is there a
series
website
of
associated?
Things, yeah. JasonAugustusNewcomb.com.
Oh, Jason.
I think you're the first person that I so blatantly plugged something in front of. But anyway.
No, that's what I started with. Let's set the tone.
So, the meditation on the sort of the destruction phase and ultimately the sort of rebirth phase as something new, or just as its disparate parts and to be made into something new. That's what you're talking about with that particular work. But with the dry work,
Right.
With the copper, what's that observation?
It's the same thing. It's you take a piece of copper and you heat it up, and it turns black as the carbon from the flame hits it, and any carbon that's on the surface burns off. Oils, thumbprints, whatever, and you can see it. And watching it heat up, you can see the impurities as they turn black. The ones furthest out turn black first. The ones that are closest to the heat turn black first, and then it goes down until the whole surface is black. And then if you keep heating it, this is just with a pair of pliers and a blowtorch, right? Okay. And if you keep heating it, eventually the black start to turn white. The black parts as they burn up, they turn to ash and they blow off in the wind of the heat blowing past it, and then you have just the copper. And the copper starts to heat up.
Is that my chemistry and alchemical terms might be a little mixed up, but is that calcination when it's whitening like that and flaking away? Is that correct?
Yes.
So in the a number of years ago, I was sort of like experimenting with synthesizing various hallucinogenic drugs and having that similar sort of attitude towards it. That the transformations that were happening in the various phases of that process were alchemical, and then the advantage of that is at the end of it you get to experience a bunch of hallucinations as well. So
that's awesome. Yeah, because what do you do with the Philosopher's Stone when you have it? You grind it up and you mix it with water and you put it out in the world.
Right. So your work is interesting because particularly your Seven Spheres book, because it's a good book. I actually think it's got a lot of merit to it for a number of reasons. Most of which for me is that it continues the sort of tradition of magic being about sort of improving yourself and making your world a better place and making your inner consciousness more rarefied, more improved in whatever ways you can, while at the same time sort of drawing a little bit from the grimoire tradition. What I find interesting about it is that you kind of get lumped with the other sort of people who are looking backward like that. I don't want to call them grimoire purists because I know that's sort of a pejorative at this point, but the people who are doing that sort of work, you get lumped in with them a lot. But if you read this book, it's not really a book of traditionalist magic at all. It's very innovative. It's got a lot of, and you don't want people to know that? Are you trying to hide that? You know exactly what I'm saying, obviously, but
it is 100% traditional Trithemian drawing spirits into crystals magic.
I mean, it's got a lot of cool, it's got a lot of aspects of that in there, sure. But I mean, you draw. There's some pagan stuff in here. There's some
blink in your face Christianity.
And there's some, sure, there's definitely some sort of, monotheistic, religious stuff in there, but that's obviously present in Trithemius as well.
Right.
That's the model.
It's all Neoplatonist, man. That's what it is. It's all just like super one thing.
So, but I just, how did you manage to get sort of hooked into that, that paradigm without actually doing so? Because I feel like you're actually an innovator in a lot of ways.
Oh, I think I am.
Traditionalist innovator.
What I do is I read it and then I turn it into a technical manual. I used to be a tech writer, so it's like
I mean that's one thing. I mean, my writing is that way too. I feel like a lot of people don't read my books because they're so boring, because there's just a bunch of like, do this and then do this,
yeah.
and then do this and that. But I mean, this is actually this is great because you do have a lot of sort of like, you can do this stuff in here. It's, you know, it's like, it's not, it's laid out in a way that makes it so that you can do this experiment and you'll get whatever results you get. But
see, one of the things that I'm liking about what you're doing here for this concept that you're putting out there is getting into the magic circle, inside the magical circle. You know, that's like, it's like getting actually inside the circle is the most, I don't know. It's like everybody's allergic to it. It's the hardest thing for me.
We had a little technical glitch there for a second, so we're coming back, and we're going to go back to discussing Joshua's alchemy processes. So we were in copper at Chemistry.
Yes, copper, when you heat it up with a blowtorch, turns black, turns white, and then it starts to glow red, and that's just when it's starting to. It hasn't even started to melt yet, and then after it starts to glow red, if you take the heat off of it, it goes through this peacock phase as it cools off, and it turns this dark red, and then it starts to turn through all the other colors of the rainbow, all the way over to this pearlescent green that looks like a peacock feather, and that's why they call it the green work. That phase where it's in between the white and the red. That's it's like a little. It's a part of the process where it can turn any color, right? And to me, that's the integration. So map that onto the initiations that we go through as magicians in the Hermetic systems at like a 30,000 foot view, right? There's the elemental initiations, there's planetary initiations, or sphere initiations, or initiations into Sephiroth, whatever you want to call it. They're basically planetary or celestial.
I mean, that's the way we did it.
Yeah. And then there's super celestial, right? And that's that which cannot be spoken of because it's all encoded in hymns of silence and whatnot. So yeah. So if you look at the path of the magician that's laid out in the Emerald Tablet, it's raise up and return it in power. Go up through the spheres and come back in power. And I was looking at this copper turn all these different colors after it started to turn red. So on your way to the red work, it turns all these other colors as it cools back down and comes back down to earth. And it's as it returns to this state of normalcy. And it hit me that the projection phase of the great work, the red work, is where you create the stone, but that's not the final stage of alchemy. It's where you grind up the stone and mix it with water and heal the sick, and that for free, right? You know, so that's the final stage of the great work. So at that point, I applied it all to myself, you know, and I decided that that's what I was supposed to be doing was what we do, you know, this teaching and talking and just telling people about what we've learned and heard and seen.
And that's your philosopher's stone, is to grind up what you have learned and spread it out through the internet.
And to, well, actually for me, it's more to encourage other people to do that.
Sure. Of course.
And that's it. I'm like my great work is to be a cheerleader.
My whole purpose for this series of interviews is that I want to encourage people to actually be more practical in their work, and to see that the people who have written books and who do things are actually quite normal people who have the same sort of foibles that everybody else does, and they're just doing stuff and learning stuff, and they make mistakes and they don't know everything and all that sort of stuff. To that end, what is your take on sort of the spirit world? You know, there's a sort of competition going on, and I actually don't think it's a real competition at all. I think it's mincing words over stuff in order to have different cults that fight with each other. But there's the psychological model and the grimoire purist model that are fighting right now, which is really the spirit model versus the it's all in your head model. And I don't really think that anyone subscribes to the all in your head model in the way that the spirit model people would like them to believe. But where do you fall in that camp, and what are your sort of beliefs around that?
Okay, so at my core, I really do believe the Hermetic approach to things, the Neoplatonic-ish belief that everything exists in the mind of God.
Right.
So if I'm in the mind of God, then so are all the other spirits. So yes, they're all in a mind, but practically speaking, they behave as if they were separate, individual, unique, having their own lives and their own tasks and their own things that they represent. When I conjure a spirit, it acts like it's separate from me. So regardless of whether it is or not, for me to pretend differently, it just doesn't make any sense. You know, if I'm going to conjure it as if it's external, it's external for the duration.
That is ultimately exactly what Aleister Crowley says in Magic in Theory and Practice. Almost not really word for word, but really the exact same expression, which is, you know, that for all intents and purposes, why am I communicating with something? I'm paraphrasing here, but if it's not outside of myself, why am I communicating with it? You know,
Right?
so
Because I could just think. I could sit here and think.
right.
But
We
no,
can all,
but
yeah.
that's a valuable tool in the occult. This projection thing, you know, like when we ritually do something, like the Gnostic Mass is the ritual I've done the most in the last 8 years, like almost more than my Trithemian stuff in my entire life. And each time we're doing the same thing. We're reenacting the waking up of a dead guy in a tomb, walking around and doing powerful things and invoking powers and acting out the transformation and transmigration of the soul, the revelation that happens after death, and what happens when you return from your death trip and beyond the veil, and when you return to the rest of the world, what you're supposed to do with it. Like the whole model of the great work is right there in that ritual.
Absolutely.
And when you're doing that with other people and you're acting it out, you're creating a community of awarenesses that are all working together to create something. And in the same way that observing a frog decompose or observing a piece of copper change colors creates in your own mind a series of thoughts that lead to a specific endpoint, that is a transformation of your understanding and of your spiritual insight into the workings of the universe, right? You know, that crap. I lost my original point. I'm sorry.
It's okay. You're not the first.
Yeah.
So I mean, really, the point of my question is when you're dealing with the spirit world, are you doing it from the perspective that you're a person who's trying to manipulate something outside of yourself, or are you trying to integrate something? Where, you know, where's your take on what these things are for?
My take is that they're external. I mean, the short answer is they are external to me, because if I'm going to interact with them separately, then I need to interact with them separately. And I wouldn't be here separately or thinking I'm separate if I was supposed to be doing it differently. I think that if I wanted to be at one with everything, you know, I'm not that far away from being able to do that at any given time. So if that was really what my intent was, I could return to at oneness with the dirt today. And that's not why I live and breathe and have my being, you know?
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting perspective. We hear that a lot, that basically the purpose of incarnation is obviously to have a separate existence, or we wouldn't be doing it. But how often do you find yourself interacting with spirits at this point? Is it a regular thing, or is it?
Yeah, every day.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not
within a magic circle, or just in, you know, the environment.
That's my altar back there. So yeah, I mean, like this is my magic circle right now. This is where I do my ritual. When I light my incense and I call my spirits, I do it right there at that table. I've got an altar space out in my living room with all the statuary of the gods, where I do my devotional work every day. Light a stick of incense and a candle, and say my Orphic and move on and about whatever. But yeah, I mean, I'm working on. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
How many Orphic hymns do you say per day? Just the one that deals with the divinity of the 7-day week, or?
Well, it depends on how much other magic I'm doing that involves Orphic hymns that day, but usually at least one. So it depends.
So how much magic? How many sort of distinct rituals do you usually do in a day?
Usually like one or two at the
Okay.
most. It's not a lot, and they're
And,
usually but this is like 10 or 15-minute rituals, you guys. It's not
okay.
for
Yeah.
the audience,
For us.
the
Yeah. I mean,
invisible audience.
I was talking to Adley Nichols, and his rituals often involve 3 or 4 hours of stuff. So that would be a lot if you're doing that every single day.
Yeah, no, thank you. See, this is another reason if you read my book, and the reason it's green is because of the green phase of the great work. That
Okay.
was what I was trying to get to with the copper thing.
Sure.
I remembered. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, the green work is that conjuration of the archangels. It takes you up through the 7 spheres and then back down, and
Okay. Yeah.
gets you a little bit of power. So anyway.
And that, I mean, you are inspired by the Poimandres or Pymander of Hermes to an extent in that, which is actually a work that has been pretty inspirational to me in my own work as well. And one of the things that this brings us back to the spirit question. One of the things that I think is interesting about the time period we live in, because we've gone back and forth on a number of belief systems culturally. That book sort of defines evil spirits largely as negative character traits within ourselves. You know, that the person who doesn't have their nous in order is subjected to one malignant spirit after another, which drives them to drink and to lust and to do these negative things that, you know, that the book views as being problematic. Now, obviously, culturally, we've shifted on what is problematic behavior and what is, you know, like. Yeah. But I mean that book does that book, and as well as the Greek magical papyri, and also whoa, you dropped out there.
Sorry,
that's okay. Iamblichus, as well. The distinction between what is an entity that is like one that controls a different aspect of nature or is associated with a place or a natural object, and the kind of entity that is something that pushes us in various negative direction is not distinct. There's no line drawn in the sand there. Whereas nowadays there's this distinction that this is my personal demon. It doesn't have anything to do with any kind of spirit outside of myself. And then there's the demons that are outside of ourselves. And so I think that line that we've drawn in a modern way creates a lot of the challenges between the viewpoints on what magic is and what it isn't. So one thing that's interesting is that you have a very spirit-based approach to magic in most ways, but you also have a lot of influence from Thelema, which is one of the culprits of the so-called psychological model. You know, that influence in the world has been very significant. How do you integrate those things? Do you find that people that you're working with within those orders are, you know, on the same page as you, or is there a lot of distinction? Have I lost you?
I'm sorry. I had a technical difficulty there.
Did you hear my question or no?
No, it cut out right as you were starting to say. My question is.
Okay, so you heard me talking about the distinction that we used to have, with the lack of distinction that we used to have about what inner and outer spirits, and right. or not even that, but just that everything was associated with spirits. So the things that are coming to you that are negative thoughts are being influenced by spirits. It's not so much that people believe that that everything was a spirit. There was a consciousness to all things that wasn't necessarily our own. We were sort of this point of reference that was going about amongst spirits. But in modern esoteric orders, of which you've been a part of at least a couple, there's much more of a psychological approach to magic in many ways, whereas your approach is very spirit-based. Do you find that there's you see eye to eye with the people who you're doing, say, the Gnostic Mass with, or are people coming from a lot of different perspectives?
There's a lot of different perspectives, but we kind of leave our disagreements at the door, about things. Like there's a temple space set up in every lodge in the OTO. And once you go into the temple, you're all Thelemites in there, and you're all there to do the ritual that you're there to do, and you do it together, regardless of how you interpret it or whatever. You stick to the script. You set aside your own personally received gnosis, and you pull it together for the team, right? So there's that. But it's not like it's more like doing a play than it is like doing a ritual. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You're putting on a performance of the mass. You're not conjuring a spirit. When we did magic together, like I got to work with Scott Michael Stenwick, right? He's the current body master locally. And just full disclosure, I'm not a part of the OTO anymore. So
right. Well, I want to talk about that briefly at some point, but
yeah, okay. The way he does magic, he has every Tuesday night he does a ritual magic night, and it used to be everybody who showed up had to do a ritual. It was like Fight Club, you know. Everybody who comes better be able to do something, even if it's just read from this book that we have here that walks you through the LBRP or something, you know, something mundane and simple. And it's don't show up if you don't want to do the magic. But his approach is like sort of not chaos magic, but chaos theory. So he talks about probability fields and shifting paradigms and stuff like that. And I mean, that sets my teeth on edge.
Why does that set your teeth on edge?
Because my dad was all into that in the late 80s and early 90s. And it, you know, it right when we had the recession in 90 or 88. Anyway, my whole family got screwed over at the time that he was very much. So I have an associative trauma with chaos theory and paradigms.
It's interesting to find the personal story behind everybody's belief system, but
right. I mean, it's not like anybody has like separated themselves from their belief system.
So okay, so when you talk to a spirit, let's say Boone, because I think that you may be responsible for his popularity to a large extent. But so you talk to Boone and you ask Boone for something. Sometimes Boone gives you what you ask for. Sometimes Boone does not give you what you ask for. Correct?
That's correct.
So on those times when Boone doesn't give you what he asked for, how does he explain his inability to accomplish that? That he doesn't want to? It's not in his office, or what's the?
He always tells me he did exactly what he said, or exactly what I said. Everything I've asked for, he says I've always gotten, and I'm like, no, I specifically asked for this amount of money, and he said I did everything that I needed to do to get you that money. So I think that they either set things up so that you have the opportunity to make that kind of money.
My internet has been very unstable for some reason. This conversation, I tremendously apologize. You're the first time this happened. I don't. What is going on? Do you know?
I have no idea, but
no, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to my wife.
Oh,
I was looking past the game. Yeah, come on, Josh. You're I've called tech support. You're supposed to be helping me, buddy. Okay. So the question that I had asked you is, and for those of you watching this delightful, technical, flawed interview, I may leave it just the way it is. I don't know. But
Mercury loves us.
What?
Mercury loves us and wants us to be happy.
Apparently, hopefully, yeah. Mercury, come on. Or Zeus, maybe you can atmospherically stop whatever you're doing that's making this as bad. So anyway, Boone, you said you were starting to say Boone sets things up for us, and then it all went haywire.
Yeah, like he'll set up the. Hey, maybe I'm not supposed to talk about that.
Maybe I know.
Maybe we're revealing the mysteries of the universe.
Both times you've broken up, it's been at a very interesting point in the conversation that could potentially be something. Maybe.
Okay.
But keep going.
Maybe I can fix that. You know. Okay. So what he does is he sets up the situations and the opportunities for us to manifest the things that we're asking for. But if we're not paying attention, we might miss the subtle cues of the universe. If it's like if somebody does a ritual with one of the demons that are supposed to bring you sex and love and all that stuff, and you don't realize that the girl at the counter is flirting with you, and you don't think to ask for a number, and you miss out on it. You know, that in that moment you had your opportunity and you blew it. So
also you have to actually go to the place that has the counter that would have the girl at it. And so if you just sit at home, it makes it hard as well.
Right. Unless you really are into, pizza delivery drivers who,
right.
What's
the prettiest pizza delivery driver in town? So in contacting Boone and other entities, you use some interesting methods yourself, not just the ones that are described in here, but some other ones. So, what are your main way, other than just sort of connections that you've made and natural communication that you might be in? What methodologies do you usually use to kind of make that contact?
I have what I call a conjure box. It's it's two electrodes that stick up out of an old cigar box, and I use metal talismans that have the seals of the spirits engraved on them. I set the talisman across the electrodes. It completes a circuit, and it lights up a light bulb underneath a crystal ball in the center of my trithemian table of practice that I have wood burned into the top of the cigar box. So I wood burned in a table of practice. I set up this really simple circuit. I've used things like the light from a beard trimmer, because it has a button that turns it on and off, and it turns on a stupid LED, and it's perfect, and it fits right underneath a little hole, and you just tape it up.
So you ripped apart consumer stuff and built your stuff out of it?
Yeah, little flashlights. And
cool.
I did go to I went to Radio Shack and got a bunch of stuff once, and then I did a Boone Wright, and my house burned down, and so I didn't.
Wow.
That's the big story that everybody, like, I talk about the most, because people are like, well, demon magic doesn't work. I'm like, and then they're like, oh, it's totally safe. And I'm like, yeah, it is. But I was safe the whole time. I wasn't in any danger. I was stressed out for 6 months, but.
I hesitate to say this because my wife is nearby, but I've actually set fire. My ritual space has caught fire on multiple occasions. So.
Yeah. Well, when your ritual space includes a map and a gas torch.
Yeah, well, that gets pretty dangerous. So, it's
for magic.
So your methodology is pretty modern in your approach. Do you use the traditional conjurations? I noticed in Seven Spheres you've got your own conjurations in here that aren't completely trithemian. So how much is innovated in that as well?
I try to modernize things as much as I can and put it into my own words. I don't think if you look at the people who are writing like the grimoires in the 1600s, none of them were saying that you need to go down to Ur of Chaldea and gather the clay and build your scribing tool out in this hour and at this day. They weren't telling you how to do things from 10,000 years ago in the language of 10,000 years ago. They're telling you how to do things in the 1600s using 1600s level technology.
Sure.
So what are we going to do today? Tell everybody to go out and let's recreate the slaughtering of this lamb so that we can have the seal of Skirlin exactly right and
There's
still
people doing it.
I know I'm quoting here. I'm paraphrasing here, I should say. But I mean, it's like at some point you got to get to a point where you're like, in every age we write for that age using that age's words.
However, I do have to say, there's a lot of written stuff in here that I'm imagining there's a lot of people who are now using these exactly word for word and thinking that Joshua's words have to be obeyed. And you don't feel that way, or no?
No, not at all. I think that everybody should be doing it for themselves, and there are ways that work, and doing it the way other people have done it teach you the ways that work. But like I do this devotional with Hermes. I talked about it on my Applied Hermetics podcast, right? And I'm like, here's this prayer of Hermes. I wrote it. I'm going to read it, and I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it. And I read it for a couple months, and then I got to know him. And in a situation, I could call him by his name and just talk to him. And it was so much more effective than reading this formalized prayer had been at the beginning. But it was as a result of doing all that formulated work. So
okay, so this is a really good example of kind of what I meant by your belief. So when you're talking to Hermes, and you guys are just your buds at this point, right? So what is that conversation like for you? Are you in an inner space where you're seeing Hermes? Is Hermes in the room in front of you? Are you just sort of getting a sense of his presence and a whisper of a voice in the back of your mind? What is the experience like for you?
Those are all good descriptors.
Which one's true?
All of them. Depends, right? I mean,
sure, yeah. Okay, what is it generally for you?
Generally, I'm standing in front of like some symbol of him. There's a rock on a path nearby that is like a herm, like they had in Greece at the crossroads.
Okay.
And it's at a crossroads. It's great, and I can picture myself in front of that. And I've made offerings of quail eggs to Hecate there with Harper for like 3 years now. So this
is a real place.
This is a real place, and getting in the mindset that I'm in when I'm doing that is super easy for me because we've done it like once a week for years, you know?
So but your experience that you're describing would be more in a memory space of that with
right.
Okay.
Like right now I could do it. I could put myself in that position and feel the wind and smell the smells of the local ponds and all those things. And when I can do that, I'm in that sacred space where I'm offering things to Hermes, where I'm reading his poetry, his odes, his hymns, you know, where I'm performing the worship. I can get myself to that mental state. And I don't think it's all in your mind, like all that, but when you remember, when you're chatting with somebody that you know on Facebook and Messenger, and you know them in real life too, you're not looking. Yeah, what's that?
You can hear their voice in what they're writing. Yeah.
And you smell their hair product, you know. Sure. And it's like when you can do that with the gods, it just puts you in that right frame of mind, and then you can send a text message up to the gods and say, "Hey, Hermes, you know, Agonius, I'm having some troubles with my ability to understand this concept. I'm really struggling. I'm wrestling with it. You know, you're the god of the games. You're the one that teaches us all these things. I need your help here. You know, so how do I fix this problem here that I've been wrestling with? You know," and then I listen.
And does Hermes speak an answer, or does an answer just sort of come to you?
Sometimes, yeah, right. It depends. If I'm looking for an answer.
A lot of people get hung up on this, and I this is why I like to ask people details, because some people think if you don't get this, like, you know, this auditory sense that knocks you off your feet, that you're not doing it right, or that there's something wrong. So
not only that, but people are telling people that, and that gets on my nerves. If you're a modern occultist and you're telling people that they have to have a physical or material or visual or audible or some kind of sensory experience of a spirit, then you don't understand how your senses work, for one thing, or how spirits work, or how magic works, and you're building failure into your teachings for your students.
Do you think those people are just full of it, or do you think they're having a different experience than you?
No, they're definitely having a different experience than me. They are sincere, they mean it, they feel it, they believe it.
Or do they describe things differently than you? Because, like, I once read, I think E.A. Coetting, is that his name? I once read a book of his where he basically describes a practice that I think is a pretty common practice in a lot of magical circles, where you just basically kind of like imagine light in the room, and then you fill your body with the light, and the light sort of like but the way he describes it is so over the top melodramatic that it sounds impossible. But I mean, it's a practice that I've described. It's a practice that many people have described, and it's not like a hard thing to do, but he describes it in this like intense, dark, you know, magician-y kind of, and it makes it sound impossible.
The dark light.
So I'm wondering if sometimes what people are describing, like, oh no, the spirit is actually in the room. But, you know, if you said, well, I mean, is it actually in the room in the sense that, like, if someone threw a rock at it, they would bounce off their head? No. You know, I mean, like, so, you know, as soon as you start, you know, asking the qualitative questions, people have to sort of retract things, and, you know, and say, no, it's not quite like that. So I'm wondering if it's a descriptive issue more than anything.
Do you remember Liszewski's work?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he was very into the physical manifestation or bust, and he talked about the boomerang effect, and that influenced the modern crop of super traditionalists, and some of the super traditionalists that are the younger magicians that are demanding, you know, these ash wands that are cut in one stroke at dawn.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, they are. I mean, it's great. Go for it. I definitely support that, but they don't even know who Liszewski is, and they don't understand why they believe today that is so important. So
Well, and I think a lot of the like Aaron Leach, your buddy, your sworn enemy,
yeah, that
he
asshole.
hates Lisinski and refuses to have him discussed on his
Right.
page. So
Yeah, because of the and Lizuski came out and said, I found an interview with him for the Llewellyn newsletter, and they took it down eventually because I made such a big stink about it. In my opinion, I believe that they took it down because of me.
right.
But I was pointing out that he said none of those things happened all at once. He has this intro to one of his books where he talks about the windows shaking and the pictures quaking on the
Right.
wall, smells filling the air, green lights seen reflected off of mirrors, all this stuff. He said, yeah, one time when I did a ritual, a picture fell off the wall. Another time if there's a wind in the temple and all the doors were closed. And it's normal shit that we all experience. And he put it all together into one big thing, and it sounds intense.
Right, and I think that's one of the challenge. I mean, as writers, obviously, we want to write in a way that's interesting. So we're gonna, emphasize things in a way that makes it sound as interesting as possible, and that sometimes makes it sound
Yeah.
more interesting than it actually could be.
Well,
Going back to your inner experience though for a second, when you are encountering a spirit or a god, does it generally seem to be at your size? Like it's as tall as Joshua Gadbois, or is it bigger, or is it glowing? Like what are the sort of inner qualities of the beings that you've encountered? Oh gosh, we froze again.
well, okay, so it's not, I was saying before, it's not like that because a lot of people have the ability to scry and see like instantly in their mind's eye what the spirits look like and hear their voices in their heads or all these things. But for me, I always had to strain really hard to even get a sense that they were present. It took me years and years to realize that smell that I smelled with the Holy Guardian Angel was a way to get in touch with these spirits. Is, if you're present, please let me smell something. If you're present, appeal to the senses that you can appeal to, that I can feel you. And these are the things that helped me gain confidence that the spirit was there, because if I would ask for a smell for Jupiter, I'd get basil, or something in keeping with that. Or for Mars, there would be like this sulfuric kind of smell, and
Have you missed a calling as a perfumer?
oh, perhaps.
If olfactory is your lead sense, maybe you're.
It's just my lead example. I get tingles on my skin, and I'm like, for me, the number one way to tell is like I can feel the pressure in the room change.
Mm-hmm.
Like it feels more dense when a spirit is there, or it feels lighter or hotter or drier or moister, or whichever the humors.
So would I be correct in saying that there's probably a lot of different ways that a spirit can make itself manifest, both to you and to other people, and that it's a change that you're saying is that people should be looking for, some sort of difference?
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, you look for this shift, and once you feel the shift, you know that they're there, and then you just talk to them as if they were there, and trust
And
that
the
they're
answers
hearing
come
you.
to you in different ways.
Sometimes, yeah, and so for me, sometimes I don't hear anything during the ritual, but within that night I might have a dream that
Sure.
answers my question, or someone will say something in casual conversation that confirms something that I might have thought I heard.
Yes.
Other times I do hear a voice, and I make sure I've taken my meds, and, and if everything is okay, I might actually believe that I did hear something. But I tend to be very careful about that kind of thing, because it's so easy to imagine the answers that I want. So I don't always trust when the spirits say things, but there's
the thing that comes into your mind immediately, you mean?
Yeah, and the reason I keep gesturing over here is because it's always, when it's trustworthy, it doesn't come from inside my head. It always feels like it's coming from back and slightly above,
On
either
the
on the
right
left or
side
the
like
right.
that, or?
Well, usually on the left, but on one side or the other, not in the center, and not in my head, not like in my forehead or in my ears or anything like that. It's always something a little outside, so that I can tell. And I don't know if they're doing it so that I can tell they're separate, or because that's how it's supposed to sound, but that's how it is for me.
when I experience a distinct sort of voice phenomena like that, where it really, like, I almost am like, is that in
Yeah,
my
like we
it's usually a fairly brief interaction. Do you find that you can actually go back and forth in that situation, or is it more just a, like, to me it's like there's something being told to me, and that's about it, that the conversation is going to happen, maybe one
yeah,
more.
like one-sided.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's one-sided, but I've you know, the knowledge and conversation part, I took it literally, and I just started talking to my holy guardian angel or supernatural assistant or whatever you want to call it.
Do you think those are the same thing? Because
I
there's
think
some.
functionally, yes. So,
Well, what's interesting to me is that, like, I grew up on the concept that you could make a relationship with, say, Boone, and have that be your spiritual assistant, or you can make a contact with your holy guardian angel, and that Boone, as a spiritual assistant, is not really going to be the best for you, because Boone has a different agenda than my agenda, or even my, or my holy guardian angel's agenda. So, I mean, Boone can be a friend and an ally, but without that holy guardian angel, that sort of central guiding force in your life being what is actually your supernatural assistant, you're kind of setting yourself up to not really grow, or create problems for yourself. That's sort of the, Golden Dawn system model.
Right. And there's a lot of that kind of thing going on. But if you read through the, like, Abramelin, where we get most of our mythos around the holy guardian angel, one of the first things it does is it tells you every time that it saved your life that you didn't know about. You know, and when I went through that phase with my holy guardian angel, it showed me every time it was interacting with me under a different face. You know, like, I had this big black dragon that was my animal familiar when I was, 14, 15. And it was, my whole fantasy world was through that. And I was like, yeah, that was me. And I was like, okay. And then, there were experiences with the Holy Spirit when I was in Christianity. And he was like, yeah, that was me. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, and just all these different spiritual experiences of my life, he showed me that he had been there with me, and not only took credit for it, but also informed me that there was a plan the whole time.
Well, I guess that's good to know, right?
Well, I mean, and it was definitely what I needed to hear at the time. I don't know if I would believe it today, but
I don't know that experience is distinct to the holy guardian angel, because I actually feel like I've recently had an experience with Hecate, who's definitely not my holy guardian angel, where it was shown to me that she's kind of been a presence in my life in various different phases as well. So
yeah, Hecate is well, she's like Hermes Chthonios, right?
Right.
I mean, they're
she's
everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, there's not a pie anywhere that hasn't had their fingers thoroughly inserted, and it's just like,
certainly throughout. I mean, Neoplatonism is very inspired by the Chaldean oracles, which it seems like, I mean, according to most scholars at this point, Hecate is a huge part of that we don't even recognize, because she's only mentioned a few times in the book, but her presence as sort of the world soul seems clear. So Hecate for Neoplatonists would have been very important, and that was actually one of the points for me, was that I saw that, and then all of a sudden I started sort of experiencing her as a presence, and I realized, oh, she's actually been like a huge part of this whole process that I didn't even notice. But so anyway, back to you. When you do, on that rare occasion when you are seeing an actual spirit in front of you, I'm just curious, because this is something that comes up with people sometimes. Do you find that it is smaller than you, bigger than you, same size as you?
No, I don't see size.
There's no presence. There's no concept of that being an issue.
When they're strong in the room, they feel big. They're filling the whole room. But when I'm hearing a little tiny voice behind my head, they feel smaller, but they don't feel any less themselves. The quality is the same if the quantity shifts. So.
Okay, so I want to talk about a couple of things that have to do with other matters that are just sort of things I'm curious about. Rufus Opus, Joshua Gadbois.
Okay.
So at a certain point, you were teaching a class on your red work, or your, going towards that. But there's somewhere on your blog. I hope I'm not confusing with someone else, but I'm pretty sure this is you. From all the context. No, this particular thing. You said you weren't going to teach the course but you're going to let other people teach it or something, because you were involved in the AA, and that had all the same stuff but already ready-made, and you didn't need your course anymore. Can you?
Oh, I don't think that's what I meant.
That's not what you meant? Okay, so what did you mean by that?
I take it back. No, everything in the AA. No, I quit selling the course because I was so busy with the AA work and the OTO stuff. I didn't have time to teach it well.
Okay.
For one thing. For another thing, I was charging a lot of money for it, and I was struggling with the Rosicrucian commandment.
Right.
The only thing you do, your only practice is health, is medicine for the sick, and that for free. Right. And I was like, okay. So I didn't feel comfortable taking the money, and I was involved in the intra AA lineage political machinations, and it would have looked bad if I were selling. It would have been something they could have used against me to sway popular opinion if I were still charging for that stuff. So it was more beneficial to me for my plans at the time to quit selling it myself, but I didn't want it to go away. So I created a test, just like the AA has for each of the grades. And I was like, okay, you have to demonstrate that you understand these core principles. And I had like 5 or 6 core principles that they had to tell me that, or show me that they could pick up where I left off and turn it into something even better, and
that's still going on.
Yeah. And Sam Block knocked it out of the park. Digital Ambler. He did a great job. I can't remember which name to use, but yeah, everybody else that has picked it up and ran with it are doing great. The Royal, there's one that's the Royal Art. No, that's John King. The Red Art or something like that. I can't remember all the different names that they've taken it with. But some are more successful than others, and some are more interesting to pursue.
What do you think it is about your work? I mean, I don't know anything about what your work is about. So what do you think it is about it that has led many people to want to continue what you started and develop it further? What, were you inspired by divine,
obviously.
Well, I mean, some people say that, and some people not about you, but
just look at me. I'm God. No, wait. Yeah, no, I think that it's because I'm down to earth and approachable about things. I don't take myself too seriously. I make it seem like anybody can do it because I'm sitting there, this nice fancy hardbound book, cussing up a storm and talking about, I don't think I mentioned bowel movements in this book, but it's not because I'm opposed to bowel movement mentioning. It happens, and if you're going to pretend like it doesn't, I don't know. I've been reading through some stuff out of Hadean Press and Scarlet Imprint, and those publishers over in the UK, and there's an approach to writing that is conserved in their works, and if that's what people are imprinting as good scholarship, it is no wonder that people are beating feet to things like what I'm writing that is just plain English.
So you're saying they make it unnecessarily confusing, and
I think that their cultural even though the language is the same, their cultural and internal cultural pressures and whatnot are so completely foreign to me that reading a sentence is like I have to rewrite the sentence, because it's like, here's a bunch of subject and here's some descriptors of what's going to come later. Here's the object, and it's like, it's not quite Yoda, but I think they learned a different grammar than I did or something. So
well, I mean, I think obviously there's different flavors of things, and it seems like a lot of what those presses are putting out is a little bit more sort of it's hard to describe. It's not what I was saying with the melodrama, but yeah, it's not as simple to wade through. But there's a lot of value in what they're contributing still.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I'm not discrediting anything that they're writing. I hope that doesn't come across that way. I have opinions about style and quality and stuff that are very unique to me that I don't apply to my own work. So no, it doesn't. I shouldn't be taken too seriously when I criticize things like that, because like you just said, the work that's coming out of there is great. And the reason I'm reading through it is because the true grimoire system with the 3 worlds and the kings of hell and everything, it's completely in keeping with a piece of the Hermes Chthonios stuff that I found over the last few months. So it's continuing my devotional work to a deity to get back into Goetic demon magic, right when my own Goetic manual came out, and I would totally rewrite it on a different grimoire if I could, but I understand what I was trying to do. And the 3 worlds that are part of what Jake's presenting through, like Pandemonium and the Geosophia series, it's the same 3 worlds that I talk about in my book, but I would have done it differently. I think if I had if I could do it over again.
Already want to rewrite your book?
Yeah, no, I think my book is I think what my book is a great starting place for people, because it's approachable.
Is your book essentially the same book that you? Oh, I failed to mention this. I can't even believe I did this. Joshua was nice enough to participate in a 7-day class series on the Goetia.
Mastering something.
And yeah, and at that time you gave a PDF. I don't think I still included in the course because I didn't want to step on toes. But you gave a PDF to all the people who signed up for the live version of something that I think was called the Modern Goetic Grimoire. Yes. Is it essentially the same book as that?
It's essentially the same book, but it has a cover, and you can carry it.
It's actually made of paper most of the time.
Yes, you can put it on your bookshelf next to the 7 spheres. But
which one's thicker?
Actually, I believe 7 spheres is thicker. I can't believe it. There's a lot more words in the Goetic Grimoire that are unique. The 7 spheres had a lot of copy pasta going on.
Oh right, going to the you going through the rituals. But I mean that's useful for people, because if you just put all the pieces separate and you don't put them together, it makes it so that everyone's sort of like, well, what am I supposed to do here? But anyway,
that's actually how it turned out, because I changed the layout for the publication of the 7 spheres, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have left it the original way, but
I mean, then it would have been really long. I mean, I think you go through one of them so you can see how it's supposed to go. Anyway, I don't want to. In your Goetic Grimoire, do you kind of go through all the spirits like in a standard Goetic book, or do you just sort of say look elsewhere for all these spirits?
I've scried every single spirit.
And you give your sort of impression of each one of them, or?
Yep. Sort of take what they do and how it applies in 2012. When I wrote it, it was very modern in 2012.
So anyone who wants to know more about his particular approach to Goetia from the standpoint of him kind of sitting in the chair of the teacher, my 7-day class, basically it has every single person who was involved as a teacher go through and sort of teach a little class on 7 different aspects of it. And so, I mean, you have actually your little box in one of the videos, I remember, and you talk about it and you show one of did you light it up? I can't remember if you did or not. Yeah. But anyway, so you kind of talk about your process in fairly big detail there. So in terms of in my mind, there's sort of 3 different schools of magic that are kind of running right now, and I don't want to say anyone is better than the other. It's just different stuff. There's the sort of the feeling oriented magicians who don't really subscribe to any sort of standard structure all the time. They tend to be very innovative. They tend to be not so concerned about the words so much as the feelings that are flowing through them and the connection with things. And they don't really subscribe to this sort of formulaic approach to things to a large extent. Then there's another group of magicians, and these ones are largely the ones that you were talking about, that were that often have trouble getting actually into the ritual circle because they're looking for exactly the right formula, and so they tend to study these ancient texts and sort of like figure out which exact wordings and spellings of the different spirit names and so forth are the exact correct ones to use, and they format things as close as possible. They make their own candles and all that sort of stuff. But for them, that process of studying and discovering is almost more important than the actual ritual practice themselves. Sometimes, not all the time. And then there's a third group of people, and these are the people who are involved in like the AA and the Golden Dawn and stuff. And they're really more interested in utilizing ritual as a theurgic process of growth. And I don't know that either of those other two groups really are, although I mean you could say there are some people who combine all three of those together. But which camp do you feel that you're a part of, and why?
Okay, so I would put those as ecstatic, legalistic, and ceremonial, right?
Okay, I might say evolutionary rather than ceremonial, or perfecting.
Okay, theurgical.
Right.
Okay, so I would see theurgy in all of it, but that's because I believe that you remember in Poimandres,
yeah.
when Pymander talks about sending the evil demon to torment the man who is impious, right? The opposite of that is he draws closer to those who are pious.
Right.
He sends his spirit, the logos, the Pymander, to those who are pious, and he is with them, and he is aiding them, and he is supporting them in their work. So if you're starting to do these works, almost every single one of them starts with a pious act. 7 spheres, what's the first thing that we do? I consecrate this ground for our defense in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You're touching on these primal forces of your source, your environment, and the spirit that imbues both. You're creating that sacred space by touching that, right?
Sure.
And then, at that point, you've created a vibration, in my opinion. This is all Rufus Opus theurgy here. You've created a theurgical vibration because you've connected to your divine source. In that space, you're already creating a theurgical operation.
And so what is that vibration? Are you saying like the vibration of the initial or whatever from the source? You're connecting with that ultimate Big Bang,
right? To the best of your ability. Not everybody's going to connect 100% or anything, but you're that's what you're striving for. And where you're at is where you start, and you start climbing up. So when you're doing the first boon rite to get riches and eloquence and put candle flames on gravestones, right? What
which can mean your whole apartment.
Yeah, exactly. So the first thing you have to do is draw a seal, right? And the first thing you draw is a circle, right? And then Agrippa explains to you what a circle does, what the magical and the magical and spiritual properties of a geometrical form are addressed in Agrippa's thing. So when you actually draw the circle,
is that in the first 3 or is that in the 4th book though?
That's the first 3.
It is? Okay.
It's I don't remember. I think it's in it's where I think it's with book 2 scale, wherever the scales of the numbers are. It's one of those. Yeah, so you draw the circle, and you're starting to do that thing that puts you in contact with that higher form. And when the spirit is present, it's gonna, like harmonics, the theories of harmonics. If you strum a G string in a music shop, all the G strings that are in tune will vibrate. Right. So when you conjure a spirit, its vibration is going to harmonize with the vibration in you, because here's human, man, person, whatever entity. It has a little bit of the energies of every spirit, and it has no face yet. Right. That's sort of the headless thing is Adam before Adam, right? The headless state before the face has been. Anyway,
this is very philosophical. I want you to break it down a little bit more practically though. So like,
okay, so every human being has all the powers of all the 7 spheres in them.
Right.
Everything that manifests in our material world is
which were given to us as we descended from the heights. That's the Pymander story.
Right. Right.
And they're kind of afflictions in a way, really, though. I mean,
well, they do. We release them when we're done with them, but on the way down, they're the powers of creation. So, and that's whose image we were made in, was this God that created by speaking things into being. And so, I mean, to me, that's, if you're not speaking things into being, you're not following your true nature, you know? So, but we have all these powers, and we resonate with every energy that we're going to find in the material world. So when Boone comes up with his Boone energy and his Boone vibration, we have that in ourselves that's going to respond to it. And depending on how dirty or out of tune those strings are, it might take a few times being in that presence for it to start to get in tune, and that energy to manifest through us and be generated within us instead of being triggered by an outside force. But eventually, if it's Jove you're worshiping, or Mercury, or Hecate, or you're just conjuring demons and angels, the more you hang out with these guys, the more like them you become. You adopt their traits, and it's, in my opinion, it's because the vibrations kick off that part of yourself.
Well, if that's true, does that mean that a lot of these beings are extremely arrogant? Because I feel like a lot of magicians are extremely arrogant. Not yourself, but so if they're hanging out with these spirits and becoming more and more arrogant, you know, what does that say?
No, I think that they're not hanging out with the spirits. The ones who are most arrogant are spending less and less time hanging out. But like, you take the Aaron Leeches of the world.
Right? Oh, no. I wasn't talking about anyone specific.
I would like to talk about Aaron Leach in particular. Okay. He has given me permission to do this.
Okay. Not me, Aaron. Aaron has not given me permission to do
it. No. Okay. So Aaron can be very arrogant. He can be extremely full of himself, and he tells you that it is the way it is. What he says is right. And if you don't like it, fuck you, you're out. And he will block you. He will kick you out of his group. He doesn't have time for people who are going to sit there and disagree with him over petty ass bullshit. And it's not because he comes across as very, very arrogant, right? You know, to people who are very new to the system, and they aren't used to, like, I know Aaron from, 2006 on. So like, I've got 14 years of watching him do the work and progress through his phases to get to the point where he is Doc Solomon, right? And I love watching that happen with people. So I know him pretty well. So I give him shit about things all the time just to keep him on his toes. But that arrogance that you're seeing and sensing is, it does come across as arrogance because he's impatient, and that's his failure point, I think. But
honestly, I wasn't even thinking of Aaron when I was saying this, though. Just to be completely clear.
No, he's just an obvious type.
Sure. He's the biggest person who has a big personality. But I was thinking of people who are not so well known, who are still quite arrogant in their behavior.
No, I don't know those people. No, it's just he's familiar enough to everybody that
right.
Because he has a big personality and a big presence, his big failures in life are bigly obvious to even the most casual observer, and that's
sure what you mean by that, but okay.
Oh well, it's the price we pay. Like, you guys get to see me stutter and try to get these words out. I can't even talk about things without the internet breaking. It's like there are really big truths that we get exposed to as we do this stuff, and trying to put it into words is very frustrating. And we're not perfect, and it comes across as arrogance when we don't have the patience to mollycoddle every Jane who comes to the door.
I apologize. You were saying something that I think is actually fairly important, and I interrupted you to be silly, but you were saying that as we continue working, even if we're working in a more practical vein, we are engaging things within ourselves that do help us evolve. That's where you were at.
Right. And those things that help us evolve also are what make us into that arrogant person. Right.
Possibly. Right.
But it's as long as it's altruistic arrogance, I don't think there's a problem with it. If it's honest arrogance, absolutely earned, absolutely 100% valid. Like, I can be a complete asshole to people if I really know I'm right about something. I will be impatient. I will cut to the chase and I will say, look, no, this is where it says it. This is why I think it. This is what happens when you do it.
Sure.
Go do it. I'm right. And it's totally like, but man, if you don't, that's just like your opinion, man. And that's true. It is just my opinion, but it's an informed opinion,
Sure. Like
But
if you tell someone how to invest money,
Yeah.
and if they invest the money, they're gonna get that return. And if they say, no, I can invest this way, and they lose all their money, that's
Right.
their choice, right? I mean,
Right. Exactly.
kind of
And that's fair. But don't sit there and give me shit for being an arrogant asshole when I come back and I say, I told you so.
Right.
I did. I told you so.
Well, that's just me. But so the thing is that I've been talking with a lot of people recently, both in this interview process, but also in other things. And there's a lot of questions about whether initiatory organizations have any purpose in the modern world.
Yeah, I think that ship has sailed. I think that there's a call for a return to something like the Eleusinian mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
That those initiatory traditions, where they just wandered from town to town and had a party, and
Right.
at the party you got tapped and you went into the closet and had 7 minutes in heaven, and
Wow, it sounds better than I imagined, but okay, go ahead.
Well, that's the way I see it. I've been reading a lot of commentaries on academia.edu on some of these Eleusinian rites, and there's a lot more documentation on what actually happened than anybody wants to say.
That's
and
interesting.
it's just not that interesting. What they did was it was really silly, and anyway.
It's funny because I was reading one of Plato's dialogues the other day, and there's a point where is it Phaedo? But I can't remember. But I guess the mysteries are about to happen, and they're like, oh, Socrates, are you going to come to the mysteries? And he's like, I don't know, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe. Well, let's talk about it later. Like, so it is very clear that although that's something written by Plato, but whatever was going on with the mysteries was kind of like a take it or leave it kind of a thing for some people. So.
Yeah, well, and that was actually a direct challenge to it. I think I know which one you're talking about. He was fighting. One of the reasons that he did the Timaeus dialogue was because he was in an argument.
Timaeus. I think it was. Yeah, that's when we talked about. No, it wasn't that, because that's largely not in Socrates' voice, because it's someone else talking. So no, it's I think it's something about love, I think, is honestly, if that's Fido, or I don't know. This is boring for 99% of people. So let's move on. But anyway, the mysteries, the initiatory organizations, they are something that you question its value at this point?
I don't think that the lodge is any good. I think the Masonic lodge structure is over. Yeah. And I think that the mysteries need to be experienced firsthand, that the feeling people need to feel it. The legalistic people, they need to have the rules in place. They need to feel like they've been following the rules. Mm-hmm. The people who need to break the rules need to feel like they broke the rules. But whatever, you have to meet them where they're at, and the flexibility of a 3 to 5 member initiatory team that traveled around, eating, drinking, carousing, and then disappearing into the closets to do the initiations. That sounds so awesome. I think that the OTO was at its highest point when they had to go out to somebody's garage and pull out the secret equipment and
that was the OTO I was involved in. So
it still is in a lot of places, and I think that that's probably because to build the equipment, it took a community. It took like at least one person with the ability to draw the pieces up and
make the
buy the junk and screw it together and
sew the costumes.
Yeah, and sew the costumes.
So why did you quit the OTO?
Oh, I was asked to leave.
Okay. Why were you asked to leave the OTO?
I called the entire the Electoral College names.
Personally, or just as a group?
Yes, and I called for their disbandment because they were completely useless. We put on in Minneapolis, our body put on the Electoral College conference one year.
Oh, okay.
And it if you have to work with these people, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and that's a known thing in the OTO. I don't know if people I won't get in any more trouble than I'm already in, but I'm sure there's going to be some backlash for me saying so. But they're kind of prima donnas. They don't do anything. The EC was just formed in the last, like the OTO was fine without the EC, and then they formed it. And in my opinion, and this is totally biased and it's probably wrong and rude, they just do whatever they're told, and they fly around the country and enjoy the fat of the land as the visiting dignitaries, and they don't actually meet the criteria that come with the job description. Like you're supposed to be, you're supposed to have a degree in something. You have to have proven yourself intellectually. You have to have proven yourself physically in a sport. You're supposed to be able to be challenged intellectually. You're supposed to have been a published writer. You're supposed to, be peer reviewed. You're supposed to be somebody really special in society. And it's, and you're supposed to understand magic, and they don't. So I mentioned that.
Don't you think that all those things combining together is actually a pretty big, a set of hurdles to get through?
Yeah, that's the point.
But I mean, you have to, it's a volunteer organization, you have to pay to be in. So,
right.
You're just like, you have to be impossibly good and pay me to, you're kind of left with the people that you have to do things. I mean, that's the way, unfortunately, the world works, right?
Yeah. So I'm an idealist, and I was extremely drunk at the time. And I made some very public statements that, basically, by calling for the disbandment of a government body of the order publicly and calling on people to join me in that, I was in a very treasonous place within the OTO. So they had to put me on persona non grata. So yeah.
You also were involved in the AA, but that's not directly involved in the OTO at all. So are you still involved in that group as well?
I am, yes.
And
I'm still doing my work for my grade. And
do you have people underneath you within that organization as well? Or no?
I'm working on it.
You're working on it?
I have not been assigned anybody by the order, no. Last time I was assigned somebody by the order, it ended poorly.
In your version of AA, I am an initiate of AA as well, though I'm not really, my overseer has passed from this world, so I wouldn't even know how to continue that exact tradition. But are you allowed to kind of grab students that you want, or do you have to get it sort of approved through the?
It has to be assigned by your superior in our organization. Yeah.
So I'll leave that. It seems like it's a topic that you don't really like to talk about that much.
Oh no, it's not that. It's just it's secret, and I don't know exactly where I stand on the secrets and the oaths and all that stuff, but I just don't want to screw that one up. Yeah,
I mean, well, it would be rude for you to out the person who's above you or the person who's below you, but I think that Crowley specifically said that everyone should openly proclaim their involvement in it.
I'm still in the AA, and I'm involved in it, and I'm working on my grade work, and hopefully things might change.
You do feel like there is a symbiotic relationship between the red work and the AA. And how do those things dovetail together?
Well, every initiatory system that's based on Hermetics, the divine Pymanders, ascent thing, I mean, basically that's the Emerald Tablet of Hermes is the path of initiation up the mountain of Abnegasis, or whatever it is, the lower part of the 10 Sephiroth on the Tree of Life. You go up in an order from Malkuth to Yesod to I think it's Hod, and then Netzach, and then anyway, you go up through the Tree of Life.
We're losing my wife's attention with this. Okay, so that's okay. No, I just she's my barometer for when we're getting too occulty and nerdy.
Right. So as soon as I say Kether, it's all over.
Like, okay, so in a nutshell, you're saying that they are aligned because all initiatory or all growth oriented. So okay, so in keeping with that, we were, I was talking about those three areas. You called them what was the first one?
ecstatic, legalistic,
and
theurgical.
Yeah. So that, you know, that third category is really what AA is all about, and what you know, Golden Dawn is really meant to be all about as well. And so those other categories, they exist, and while you say they do contain growth in them, they don't contain the sort of formal growth or the what's the word I'm looking for, the landmarks or the, you know, the signposts of where you've grown.
You don't get the fancy little badge to put on your fancy little robe,
right? Or even just to sort of like an acknowledgement that, oh, I've now passed through this gate of this. So,
but you get the acknowledgement where it counts, though,
which is
from the spirits, right? So, like, if you go on a self-initiatory path in the Golden Dawn, you're going to get into a real Golden Dawn environment, and the people in the temple are going to be like, okay, who are you?
Sure.
Right? Because you've done it on your own. But if you go off to the spirit world and you do these initiations with Bune, you say, Bune, give me an initiation into the sphere that you rule. And you come back, you're going to be speaking very eloquently. You're going to find ways to make money for people, not for yourself, for other people. You know, you'll find that, you know, where there's dead bodies, and that's a metaphor, and that's a literal thing. If you get an initiation into a spirit sphere, you become like that spirit, and you become part of that. So you're changed, and you're acknowledged by the spirit world. They will all help you.
There's a couple of things there, though. First of all, I'm glad you said Bune, because I have always said Bune, but I've heard several people recently call it Boone, and I thought it was from you, so I was going with that pronunciation. But
I go with Bune. Sometimes.
You go Bune? Okay, so
sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a sound, and a spirit doesn't make sounds, so it doesn't really matter, right? It's a set of letters. So the thing about that, though, is that I have known a number of people who got involved in Goetic magic of various ways, or even just sort of thelemic magic, but they don't have someone who's looking over their shoulder and kind of helping them along the way, and they've like really kind of become crazy, and you know, not really growing in any kind of way, but
right.
Getting a lot of those spirit initiations. And I don't even want to say, you know, you can say, oh, they're not really doing it or not, but I don't even know if that's true, because they were having things happen in their lives, but they just went insane as a result of it. So, you know, the value in, now, I don't even know if we have very many competent people to act as an advisor or a helper in that growth process. But without having some sort of advisor, it does seem like it's treacherous territory to go into completely on your own.
I guess, so I spent most of the night talking to somebody who is in the Golden Dawn, or was at one point, and went through the initiations, and is dealing with some mental health issues as not as a result, but after, right? But I think what I've seen about the people who go crazy, who, I don't want to say go crazy, because it's not always like that, that they tend to accentuate and turn up the volume on those parts of themselves that they bring to the table in the beginning. So like I have a history in my family of what's it called? It's schizoaffective disorder, right? And the symptoms of that are similar enough to success in the occult world that I have to be super careful.
For sure.
You know, I'm like, okay. You know, so
but I mean, is schizoaffective disorder just a person who's naturally good at magic who isn't using it, right?
No.
You don't think so?
That's
okay. Let's talk about that.
No, let's talk about that. That is, no, there really is a mental illness component to mental illness that is an illness that's a real thing. The thing that we do with magic is also a real thing, but they're similar enough in appearance that you end up with these narcissists running Alpha and Omega, whatever,
sure,
orders of whatever, that have mental illness that people follow because it looks like it's magical practice or magical results. And they say crazy things, and these crazy things come true because they are connected to a crazy thing, and sometimes crazy is just hyper truth, but it's still a mental illness when it makes you dysfunctional.
Sure.
The occult practices don't lead you to dysfunction.
I guess the question I have though on that is the dysfunction is that they don't have a filter for things that works correctly, and so their tendencies are towards things that aren't healthy for themselves, right? I mean, that's really the main issue.
That's just like your opinion, man.
What?
That's your opinion. No.
Well, no, I mean, I know I'm not expressing an opinion. I'm trying to sort it out. I don't have an opinion like Socrates.
Oh, okay.
I really don't.
Good, because I don't have an answer either. I just know that every time we try to put it into words what it is, we miss it by just a little bit. And that's that ape of Thoth thing, where the ape Thoth writes all the truths of the mystery out on the sand, and the ape goes around and changes it so it can't be understood.
Right.
It's like that little story, I think, is what I'm trying to talk to here. The confluence of mental illness and occult spiritual practice. It's historic. The shamanic traditions of Siberia, they literally had people who we would qualify as mentally ill. They would be pushed into the shaman path because that's where they were best suited for. And yeah, mental illness can help you with your magic, but when you start coming back from on high, thinking that you are still on high, when those barriers are crossed, the mentally ill cannot identify boundaries. That's the illness. And it's not just it's not lacking a filter that helps them control themselves, because it's not a lack of control. They are in control. It's just that they're operating at a different. I'm sorry, this is something I actually care a lot about.
For
reasons.
I think that it's an important thing to discuss because it's something that's personal to you. So how do you manage that? That dealing with that territory, because I think there are a lot of people who have slight issues that are interested in this stuff because that's part of why they're interested in it. It's because they're feeling things that aren't normal. So.
Well, I keep a lot of it to myself. Takare is the fourth power of the Sphinx. A lot of my experiences that I have with my magic, I'm never going to tell anybody about, because I don't know how much of that is viable or useful. If it doesn't have a practical use to somebody else, there's really no point in me talking about it. If I understand, why, I don't know, I'm just going to make, this is not serious, but if I know how JFK was really killed by the aliens, then I don't need to tell anybody, because it's not going to bring him back, and nobody gives a shit,
right.
and that kind of thing.
A lot of people might actually give a shit.
Right.
You might even be able to start a whole organization based on it.
Oh, okay. What would we call it?
But what's that?
What would we call an organization of crazy people that think they're actually sane?
So let's talk about what you're doing right now, because you're starting a new thing, and you've got a lot of. I mean, obviously your Goetic Grimoire is coming out, or has just come out, and that's available for people.
Yes, the Goetic Grimoire is available. That's at nephilimpress.com. And
also Amazon, or just Nephilim Press?
Just Nephilim right now. Amazon gets it when it's on paperback.
Oh, okay. So it's in that sort of fancy leather bound. Does it have multiple versions of it that are at various levels?
No, we just have the one, and it's hardback, and it's fancy, and it's got gold leaf on it. And if that's not fancy enough, then
your expectations are too high, right?
Exactly. It's like you've never read my work. So, but yeah, after that goes to paperback, it'll be at Amazon. But right now, it's all through Nephilim. I started a Hermetic college. It's the academiahermetica.com. It's I want it to be like an open mic for the occult, where people can just come in, and you saw me try to stumble through that one sample thing that almost worked, but sure. It's going to be like, I want to see it be like an open mic for occultists who have something to share, to bring to the table that we haven't heard of yet, like you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And just a place for people to share what they've learned and encourage other people, and get people who have lots of experience and are well known, and people who have lots of experience are completely never heard of. And
if someone wants to teach a class for you, how do they kind of contact you, and how do you want to be approached? Do they need to give you like a presentation, or what?
Yes, they need to give me. They need to go to the site, and under courses, if you hover over the courses link, there's a sub link that says course proposals.
Okay.
And you just click on that, and there's a form, and you fill out the form, and you send it. You hit submit, and I get an email that says somebody has an idea for a course, and then I go and I look at it, and I get in touch with you, and we talk about it.
So what's the bar there? Like, if someone can write coherent sentences, but it's not a subject you're that interested in, will you let them teach the class, or is it are you looking for a certain level of sort of competence and experience? Where does that all, how does that all fit? In case there's someone who's thinking right now, oh, I'd like to teach a course, but I don't know if I can.
Well, a lot of people do think they want to teach a course, and a lot of people are not ready to do that. But
right.
the way to tell, everybody's said that having a published book is like having a business card these days, and it's true. If you have a well-received published book that the people that are attending the school that we're marketing ourselves towards, or that we're trying to build the community for, if you're getting published in those circles already, chances are, yeah, this is a great place for you.
What if you have a podcast or a blog or something like that, but you haven't, that's sort of the area you're looking for as well?
Sure. Anybody who is in touch with sort of where the currents are going right now, and has some kind of insight that is useful and practical for people to do better at their own work.
You just slipped something in there for a second, that the people who are in touch with where the currents are going. What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
I'm curious, because if someone wants to teach a class on say Tatwa vision from the Golden Dawn, are they going to be welcome to do that?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will tell them, in my opinion, Tatwa meditation is it's like breathing, but whatever.
It's like breathing.
You want to teach a course on that? Yeah. I mean, they teach you how to breathe in the Golden Dawn too, or at least in AA they do. So give me a fucking break.
AA definitely raises the bar on the breathing stuff. And yeah. I mean, that is it Ruvel Spiritus? I mean, he even gets into he wants you to practice breathing with various inhalants as well towards the end. So there you go.
I wouldn't know about that. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the bar is for me, it's mostly practical. That's the thing I'm looking for. If you can't make someone's life better by teaching them something, and the questions are pretty easy, is what question is your course going to answer? If you don't know, everybody wants to teach what they think and what they feel and what they've heard and look at how well I studied in school. That's great, but what question are you really answering? And if you can't answer that question, if you don't know what you're teaching, then you don't need to have a course. You need to figure that out. And so if you can't give me 3 questions that your course answers. Give me 1 technique that somebody who takes your course can walk away with and use in their magical practice, whatever that might be, that makes it better. Like the Tatwa visualizations, it sharpens your ability to imagine things. The imagination is your whatever. You specify it.
So if you a lot of people get started in this sort of thing by teaching classes at a local OTO lodge. I'm going to teach a class on the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, or a local
bookstore.
Yeah. So is that the kind of stuff you're looking for? Or are you looking for something a little bit the next level past that?
There's going to be a lot of stuff that's at the next level past that, because the first round of teachers are all by invite. And I've talked to you about it, for example. So that's the caliber of people that I'm targeting, that I would like to see teach, because I know that you guys have that level of quality and information, and you've already helped a ton of people, and I know that there's a community that might not have heard of you yet.
Right.
So getting you in touch with them and getting them in touch with you is sort of what I want to see happen with that. But then there's a bunch of younger people who are sort of fresher to the scene. They're at their 6th and 7th and 8th year in this, and 10th year and 12th year and whatever of having seriously been doing magic, and they have some intermediate level stuff that they can pass on. Sure. There's this one person that I really tried hard to get her to teach a class. She's only been doing this for a year, and she has all of these experiences of the noob, the new beginner this year from 2019 to 2020, starting her occult path. And she went from basically from a stop to 93 miles an hour.
You weren't talking about Aquis Nox, are you?
I happen to be talking about Aquis Nox.
Yeah,
and
these are the kinds of powers you could develop if you stay on this path.
But yeah, and so I wanted her to teach a class for people to get through that first year, because she's uniquely qualified for that. I can't teach that class.
Sure.
Now.
Yeah.
You can.
Too far in the path.
Right.
I'm actually interviewing her for this show as well.
Excellent.
For exactly the same reason. Obviously a class will be more her thoughts, and this will be.
Yeah, if she wants to do it. I don't know if she wants to do it though.
I'll convince her to do it. Don't worry. You got her. You got her. I'm going to make it happen.
I hope so, because she's really smart, and
I'm very manipulative with people.
Yeah, I know. I am too. Isn't it? I mean, is that age, or is that just the magic thing? I think it's the Hermetic current.
It's Hermes. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely.
It's our god. Why are you lying and cheating? Oh,
that's what he told me to do.
It's harmonics, man. I have been worshiping Hermes again.
So one more question about the Academia Hermetica. What format are people going to be doing the classes in? Is it just whatever they want to do, or is it going to be video, or is it going to be audio?
See, it can be anything. That's the thing is, I actually did buy the software that lets you do all this cool stuff. It can be Zoom meetings. You can do lecture format. You can post books in PDF form and give quizzes on chapters. You can do traditional lecture style classes, or you can do a presentation.
People of all different levels of comfort in terms of being in front of people can participate in this. Basically.
Right. Yeah, I really want to jumpstart something that's like a TED Talk thing, where you just have one person talk for an hour, and it's just a video of them talking. You gotta get people worked up to that, because I think that people get pretty long-winded in our community if they're given the chance sometimes. I know I do. That's why I'm wanting to interview people, because I can at least interrupt you if you're going too long. I don't blather on forever that way. Right. Yeah. I know. I get it. You know Annalise, right?
Yeah.
Annalise is a hero. So yeah.
So let's talk about just your promotional stuff now. So tell me your Head for the Red. How do you get to that one?
I don't really use it anymore, but it's headforred.blogspot.com.
Okay. Lots of useful stuff. That's your past, though.
Yeah, and I'll have links to that from the Academia Hermetica page.
Okay.
But it's
academiahermetica.com.
Yes.
And the new book is at
nephilimpress.com.
nephilimpress.com. Not .org.
No.
All right. So is there anything else you want to add before we wrap things up?
Just that I love everybody, and that everybody should be good to each other.